Let me tell you a story about a man named Nana Kwadwo Fodour. Now, this man was a very wealthy man, and he was actually a chief in the Ashanti Kingdom. By early August of 2019, Nana Fodour was facing a very serious problem with Alhaji Sadat Mohammed. The chief trusted this man, more like trusting God. But you see, for some months, Nana Fodour had been sending a lot of money. We are talking hundreds of thousands of Ghanaian cedis to this Sadat guy. It was kind of like a loan. The Sadat wanted to use the money to buy land in the Ejura area to start a business so he could pay Nana his money back in bits. But things didn't go well. The Sadat failed to pay the money. He missed the first deadline, he missed the second one, and eventually he just stopped sending any money to the chief. Now, Nana wasn't a man to sit down and say, okay, you dear, let's just give it to God, or dear, blah, blah, blah. No, this man was a man of action. So he started calling Sadat on his mobile phone every single time, demanding his cash. Now, the chief even gave him an ultimatum. He said, hey, Sadat, if you don't clear this debt by the end of the week, I will use my position as a chief to ruin your name and close down all your businesses in this town. Now, Sadat tried to give excuses. The guy was scared. Hey, Charlie, if this chief want to punish me, if this chief want to close my businesses, what will I do? Then I'm here. So Sadat tried to give excuses about why the money wasn't there. He wanted to try and find some ways and means to calm the chief down. But all he did just increased the tension. Things became worse and worse and worse. They were just arguing back and forth. And, the argument actually got to the point where the fight wasn't just about the money anymore. Like, it became who has more power than who. I will show you what I can do. Do you know who I am? Those kind of things. Then everything reached a breaking point on the morning of August 18th, 2019. And Nana Fodour decided that, hey, I've had enough. He said he was going to travel all the way from Kumasi to Ejura himself to confront this Sadat guy. He wanted to see those lands on his own and show everyone that he was the one in control of the properties. And while he was gathering his documents and getting ready to leave the house, he picked up his phone, and he wanted to call Sadat one last time to ask him if the money was ready before he starts his journey to go and do whatever he wanted to do. But in fact, the two of them had a very loud argument on the phone. So they ended the call without agreeing on anything. Now, this is where the story takes a very strange turn. We all know that for a great chief like Nana Fodour, he doesn't move alone. Never. In fact, it never happens that a chief will be moving around in Ghana and he'll move alone. Nah. Normally, he has a driver, he has a spokesman, and a whole group of bodyguards following him everywhere. But on that particular day, because the chief was very angry, he told his people and all his bodyguards to stay back at the palace. You just sit back. Like, what I'm going to do, I don't want anybody to calm me down. Because the fire is what? The fire is burning. He told everybody to stay back at the palace. Then he got into his car all by himself and he drove out of Kumasi and started the journey towards Ejura. While he was driving, the matter was still burning in his heart. The thing was paining him. So he got off the highway and he started using the rough roads that moved through those small farming villages. Then he parked somewhere. Then he picked up his phone and he called Sadat again to ask him some questions about whatever fight that was going on between them. Within seconds, the argument started all over again. Poo-poo, 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 poo-poo. This one will say this one will say that. The chief was very furious, asking about his money. Then Sadat was trying to explain. The more he's explaining, the more the anger is rising. Sadat tried to talk his way out of the problem. He wanted to convince the chief, "Oh chief, please calm down. Calm down. Calm down." He was suggesting, like he was trying to find a different way to pay his debt, blah, blah, blah. But the chief wasn't ready to hear any of those stories anymore. He told Sadat, "Look, the original deal is what we are going to do. And you will pay me my money." And then he just ended the phone. Now, when somebody says this to you on the phone, and the person doesn't allow you to explain yourself or to continue the conversation, and the person just ends the call, how will you feel? You know exactly how it feels, right? There's this kind of fear. You start planning, okay, what should I do? What should I do? Now this man is coming to meet me here. What should I do? And a whole lot of things, right? You start thinking about so many things. Should I run away? Should I do this? Should I do that? You know, that was exactly what Sadat found himself doing. So when the chief got to Ejura early that afternoon, he parked his car near the center of the town. Some of his close associates, or should I say, some of his thugs, okay, were waiting for him, so he went straight into a meeting with them. They sat there for hours talking about the land that Sadat was supposed to be managing. They looked over all the property boundaries, and Nana Kwadwo even brought out his own records. He showed his team exactly which part of the land were causing the trouble. Then he gave them clear instructions. They had to protect the interest of the chief and make sure that Sadat didn't claim any more lands for himself. They kept talking and negotiating all through the afternoon. It was only after Nana was sure that every one of the men in that room understood exactly which land to take over and what they needed to do in the coming days that the meeting finally ended. His associates went off to start the work, and the chief walked back through town to where he had parked his car to start the journey back to Kumasi. So it looked like he himself was not going to take the action, but he spoke to some boys to go take the action on his behalf. I don't know if they were tags or if they were whatever it is, land guards or whatever it is, but according to records, they were his associates, and that word is kind of a fancy word, but I believe that they were some land guards and all of that. So just as he was going back, all right, and just as the sun was starting to set, he turned onto the highway and he was heading towards Nkoranza. He was going back to Kumasi. Yeah. And that particular road is very lonely in the evening. If you are walking on that road at night, sometimes you can be the only one walking on that stretch for like 20 minutes, then you see another car coming. So Nana Kwadwo found himself driving all alone on that empty road as it started to get dark. While he was driving, a group of armed men stepped out from the trees on the side of the road. Then they blocked the road. What is going on? On the highway, You are blocking the road on the highway. Okay, maybe they need help. Maybe something is happening. So Nana Fodour had no choice but to hit the brakes and stop the car. The moment the car stopped, the men rushed out and surrounded the vehicle so he couldn't drive away. Then they grabbed the door handles, they forced the door open, then they stretched their hands inside and grabbed him by the shirt. They wanted to pull him out of the car. And you know, Nana Fodour was not the kind of man to be quiet. So a violent struggle started. They were fighting, trying to throw blows and all of that. But in the end of the whole thing, they managed to drag Nana out of the car and they threw him on the road. And because he had no driver and no bodyguards with him that evening, he couldn't defend himself for long. So the men pinned him down on the ground and they used knives to stab him many times. Chukum, chukum, chukum on the chest, chukum on the neck and his stomach, and Nana Fodour just collapsed. He stopped moving. At that point, he wasn't dead. He just collapsed. But the attackers were not finished with him yet. They brought out a heavy wooden pestle, fufu pounder. Now you ask, what is a pestle doing in the bush? They had actually carried it there specifically for the ambush. So one of the men lifted the pestle into the air like this and pounded the chief several times. Bang, bang on the head, toe on the body, bang. Every part of the body collected pounding. And that pounding, my friends, was what finally killed Nana Fodour. While all this was happening, some of the other men pulled out guns and started firing into the air. They wanted to make sure that if anyone nearby heard the noise, they would be too scared to come closer. So after they were done shooting and doing everything, they just left the empty bullet shells near the car tires, and the man who was holding the bloody pestle threw it into the bush to hide it. Then the whole group picked up Nana Fodour and shoved his body into his own car at the back seat. One of the men brought out a container of fuel and they poured the fuel all over the inside of the car, on the seats, and even on the body of Nana Fodour, and they set the car on fire. They wanted to do this so that everyone would think that, okay, there was a car crash and nobody was there to help this man, and you know, he died in the back seat, his driver ran away and all that. And after they set the car on fire, the men disappeared into the darkness. They left the car on the side of the road, thinking the fire would grow and burn everything so that no evidence would be left. But there was one thing they didn't realize. So you catch a musemunku square. Listen to me. When they ask you to go to school, you say you will not go to school. Pay attention in science class. You say you will not pay attention in science class. There was one thing these people didn't realize. If they had paid attention in class, if only they had paid attention, because they had closed the doors and windows so tightly, there was no fresh air that was coming into the car. Okay, there was no oxygen, and you know, fire burns with oxygen. Okay, so the fire quickly used up all the oxygen in the car, and because of that, the flames started to shrink, and in just a few minutes, the fire stopped burning. It only managed to burn the seats a little and melt some small plastic inside the car, but the car itself was still standing and the body was not destroyed. So around 7:30 that night, some drivers who were passing by noticed the smoke and they stopped their cars. Some people from Ebom, which was a nearby village, also came to see what was happening. When they looked through the windows, they saw Nana Fodour's body lying in the back seat and called the local police right away. When the officers arrived, they took the chief's body to the mortuary at Confrontation Teaching Hospital in Kumasi. And by the next morning, which was the 19th of August, the news of the murder had already reached the Menhia Palace. The chiefs there had to call an emergency meeting immediately, because killing a senior chief like that was like a direct attack on the whole of Ashanti Kingdom. And while the palace was dealing with the issue, Sadat knew very well that he would be the first person the police would look for. So he packed his bags and ran away from his house, heading towards the northern region of Ghana. He was trying his best to stay far ahead of the police. Now, it is not too sure who ordered that hit, but most definitely it could be random thieves on the road, or it could be someone who needed Nana Kwadwo dead. But at this point, Sadat knew that he would definitely be the main suspect, so he decided to run away. The police arrested 3 men in Kumasi who used to work with the chief in Ejura. The officers sat them down and questioned them for so many hours to know exactly where these men were on the night the chief was killed. But after the police checked their stories, they realized that these men didn't have anything to do with the ambush, so they just let them go. After that, the whole investigation turned toward Sadat. When the police checked his properties and saw that this guy has Jakba, they knew for sure that he was the suspect. So they quickly put him on the wanted list, and they sent all his information to the border guards and told them that, hey, if you see this Sadat guy anywhere, arrest him on the spot. But you see, Sadat had already managed to cross the border into Burkina Faso. He went straight to Ouagadougou and found a place where he thought the Ghana police could never reach him there, and he went to hide. But his luck finally ran out in the second week of September. The Burkinabe security forces spotted him moving through the streets, and they surrounded him before he could even try to run away to another part of Africa. So the officers drove him all the way across the country until they reached the Paga border crossing in the Upper East region. And right there at the boundary line, a team of Ghanaian police was already waiting to take this guy back to Kumasi. And once they arrived, the police locked Sadat in prison. While he was sitting behind those bars waiting for the lawyers to start the case, the chiefs at the Menhia Palace also started a secret custom for burying the chief. They gave a very strict order to the whole community. Nobody was allowed to talk about the death in public. And because this was their tradition, everybody kept quiet. But the surprising part is that the chiefs stopped pushing the authorities to get justice for the murder. Instead, they turned all their attention to finding someone to take over Nana Kwadwo's seat. And because of that, the case never moved forward. They would set a date today for court, and then they would push it back to next week. This kept happening month after month, and then it turned into year after year. From 2019 till today, 2026, Sadat has been left in that prison indefinitely, with no one saying when he would ever come out. And I believe he would be there in remand till thy kingdom comes. And that, my friends, is the end of today's story. My name is Nix, the unserious storyteller in the whole of Ghana. The stories I tell are true stories, actually. They are true stories of crime and all that. So, yeah, don't mind me. Though I am unserious about these stories, but they actually happened. They are real victims. They are real stories, whatever it is. If a story is not true, I'll tell you from the beginning that this story I'm coming to tell you today, Nana Kwadwo story in America, into party, but today's story is a real story, actually. So, If you liked it, please subscribe to this channel and give this video a like. I'll see you in the next.